Before you start recording anything into Cubase, you may want to consider the tempo and the time signature of your project. And for simple songs, that's very, very easy because you can just enter the tempo that you want in the tempo setting down here as well as the time signature. If neither your tempo nor time signature changes throughout the song, and it's just going to stay consistent from the beginning to the end, you can just enter those values here. For example, my drum track that I recorded before is still here. I just added some more stuff to it, so we're going to listen to it at the normal tempo of 120 and a 4/4 time signature, because that's what it's in. But if we change the tempo to 140, and then start it over again, now it's much faster. We could change the tempo again to a slower amount. So I'm going to double click and enter 95. Then I'm going to set it back to 120. And it's really simple to change the tempo after the recording of a MIDI, instrument, or sampler track. But changing it after you've recorded any audio, while it's not impossible, it's a lot more work. So I would recommend you set the tempo to the desired amount before you do any audio recording whatsoever. But what if your project changes tempo in the middle of the project, or if it changes time signature too? Well, let me show you how to do that. Those are both done with either the tempo track or the signature track. Let's add a tempo track to our project. So I'm going to right or control click here in the track column, and I'm going to choose Add Tempo Track. And then you can see that it is powered on by default. If you didn't want to use the tempo track or the changes that you've made in it, you can turn it off, but make sure it's powered up right now. And then I'm going to click and drag this track height open quite a bit so that I can see more of the tempo changes. Now I'm going to enter a retard between measure 4 to the beginning of measure 5. So to do that, I'm going to grab my draw tool, and I'm going to draw a point at the beginning of measure 4. And you'll notice that as you move that draw tool up and down, you can see the tempo that it is going to add that new little point onto. So since my beginning tempo was 120, before I draw the point on, I'll need to make sure that I have it set to 120. Then I can click, and it adds a little point. If you can see that, it's a little square on that line. Then I need to add a new point that will finish off that tempo change. So I'm going to do that here at the end of the 4th measure, which is actually measure 5, the beginning of measure 5. And I'm going to enter a value of, let's say, 92. And the result is not a retard. Instead, it is an absolute drop-off from tempo of 120 all the way to 92. What I want is a nice ramp from tempo 120 down to 92. To do that, there's a couple of different methods that you could use. What I'm going to do is come over to the inspector and click the edit button for the tempo track, and you can see here that there's a whole separate editor window for the tempo track, and I'm going to click the first event and shift click the second event so that they're both highlighted. And then under the tempo track menu, I'm going to change it from step to ramp. And what that's going to do is slowly slow the tempo down from 120 to 92. So it's going to make that retard. Let's play this from the 3rd measure so that you can hear it. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it would be to change the resolution of the draw tool. So I'm going to type undo here a few times until I get back to that first tempo change of 120. Then I'm going to change my grid type from bar to use quantize, and I'm going to set a very high value for the quantize, like 128 notes. And then, instead of drawing that first event, what I'm going to do is make sure that I get to 120 beats, and then I'm going to click and drag, and as I'm holding my mouse wheel down, you'll see that the tempo is adding multiple different changes as I go, and then I'm going to eventually get to 94. So there's a whole bunch of tempo changes now, but the result is going to be the same. It's going to be a retard. Then I'm going to want to change the time signature at measure 5 from a 4/4 time signature to a 3/4 time signature. To do that, I'll need to add a signature track. So right or control click on the track list and add a signature track. And then as we scroll back to the beginning of the project, we'll actually see that there's a default of 4/4 at the beginning already. But then at measure 5, we'll want to draw in a 3/4 measure. So what I'll do is I'll select measure 5 right here and click on it. And then the value of that change is going to be 3/4, so 3/4. And then that's going to last for 2 measures. And then at measure 7, I want it to go back to 4/4. The default value will always be entered as 4/4. So if you want to get a 4/4 back, you just click to add that event and then hit enter. And now, if I play this back from measure 3, here's what it sounds like. So we're in 4/4 time. Now we're in 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and back to 4/4. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's adding tempo and time signature changes, and in the next section, I'll show you more about the included content.